I want to first of all thank you all for being here today. As all of you know, we last session created a council of outstanding Georgians to examine the tax policy of this state, a project that had not been done in 50 years or more. And last summer, when they began that process, I simply asked them to do one thing, and that was to examine the policy with the notion of looking to make Georgia the most competitive state in the nation in terms of attracting jobs to this state and growing our economy. That council met and worked very, very hard throughout the balance of last year, had hearings and informational meetings literally all over this state, and came back with a set of bold proposals in early January that they presented to the General Assembly and made some recommendations consistent with their charge. At that point in time, the legislative process kicked in with the special joint committee that was created under the legislation last year, co-chaired by Chairman Bill Heath, who's here today, and Chairman Mickey Chanel, who could not be here because of a pressing personal matter. They have worked very, very hard and have taken up that measure from a legislative standpoint. As all of us know, the tax reform can be a challenging undertaking, and it certainly has been a challenging undertaking as we've gone through the process. I will observe that it has been a good process, I think. There's been a lot of give and take and a lot of vetting of ideas as we've gone through the process. I know that from time to time I've read and watched reports that the measure was dead when simply we were doing other things, but I am pleased to report today that we have, as a result of the good work that has gone into the bill, produced a measure that has been agreed to by both the House of Representatives, the Senate, and the Office of the Governor. That measure will be taken up Monday, sometime Monday morning. I think the time still to be determined by the special joint committee. I am optimistic that that committee will vote that measure out and that later that day, under the provisions of that resolution that was adopted last year, the House of Representatives will take up that measure and will be prepared to vote it out and send it over to the Senate so that we can deliver the one thing that I believe Georgians are wanting us to do now, and that is to create an environment to grow jobs in this state in a way that no state in this nation has ever done. This proposal puts Georgia on the road to a consumption-based tax system that will be flatter and fairer and away from a tax system that taxes productivity. By lowering the personal income tax rate, by eliminating the sales tax on energy, and by doing a number of other measures that will be described in more detail by other members of this General Assembly shortly, we, I believe, have created a historic opportunity for Georgia. Georgians, I think, have asked us to look at doing what we could do to make this a job-friendly state so that employers that are here now will feel some degree of security in maintaining jobs and adding jobs, and so that we can attract jobs to this state and put Georgians to work. I, for one, am tired of seeing an unemployment rate in this state that has hovered close to or above 10% now for a long time. And I believe that Georgians are ready to embrace this proposal. I think it's an exciting proposal. I think that, that the work of the Tax Reform Council is historic. And I look forward to debating this measure as we take it up next week. And I want to conclude my opening remarks by just saying that I applaud and express my appreciation to the leadership of the State Senate for their engagement on this issue, for their commitment to what I believe, other than passing the budget and saving Hope Scholarship, is the single most important thing we could have done this session. And I appreciate the leadership of President Pro Tem Williams, Chairman Don Balfour, Chairman Bill Heath, the Lieutenant Governor, and I especially applaud the commitment by Governor Deal to this measure. I think that we have enjoyed over the past few days a very harmonious and productive working relationship here that I think the people of Georgia will be proud of. And with that, I'm happy to introduce to you the President Pro Tem of the Senate, President Tommy Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd also like to echo the great spirit of cooperation we've had with the Speaker's office and the Governor's office on some of the issues that have been monumental. Hope Scholarships, the billboard bill, any number of difficult issues that have been hanging around for a while that we've accomplished because we had a spirit of cooperation, particularly with the Governor's office. He has been just a joy to work with on all issues that really were difficult issues that he took the lead on, such as in the Hope Scholarship correction. I want to also thank the Tax Council for all their hard work going around this state, talking to citizens out there about what our tax structure should look like. And I guess the theme of what they came back with is that if we wanted to be a productive state, we had to broaden the tax base, particularly in sales and use, and we had to lower the income tax rate. This bill does exactly that. It broadens the tax base to a lot of folks who frankly aren't paying taxes, and it gives the break to the working people of this state who are paying taxes. I think that's the right policy, and I think it'll yield great results in the future. On the way in this morning, I was listening to satellite radio, and I heard this ad by a realtor in Tennessee that says, come to Tennessee and buy a house on the lake where we don't have a sales tax. I mean, we don't have an income tax. And that was going wherever the satellite radio goes, attracting people to a state that doesn't have an income tax. We've said for a long time, I ran on it 14 years ago, that we need to eliminate the income tax in Georgia. This is the first step in doing that, in lowering the income tax rate by 25%. I think that's monumental, it's historical, and our intentions are to bring it on down over the next coming years as we broaden that sales tax base and lower the income tax rate. The other great proponent of this bill is that what we're doing for manufacturing and eliminate the sales tax on their input of energy will create a lot of jobs in this state. It's a sector of our society that's been suffering, and it also not only helps those manufacturers that are here already creating jobs, but it helps us in recruiting other companies that are looking for a place to locate, and we want to make Georgia just as attractive as any other state around us. In fact, we want it to be, we want Georgia to be their primary location for whatever their purposes are. And we're excited about that. We think this is a very good bill. Fortunately, we have some accountants in the Senate and the House who've helped us work the numbers to make sure that we were actually cutting taxes. The net effect of this bill is it's a tax cut to the taxpayers of Georgia of over $200 million over three years. I'll let our accountants, I'd like to recognize Larry O'Neill, the chairman in the House, to talk about the details of the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen. I'm honored to be here and be part of this announcement, because this is, frankly, for a lot of us, the end of a very, very long road to get here. I know of no legislation I've been involved in since I've been elected that there's been more vetting and more sincere evaluation than the proposition that I think you'll see come to fruition, hopefully out of the Joint Committee Monday and on the House floor. The single thread of absolute consensus throughout all of the tax council meetings and advisory get-togethers that I heard was that the income tax is a tax and an obstacle to productivity, savings, and investment. There's none of those three things in a recovering economy that we want to discourage. We certainly don't want to discourage productivity. We certainly don't want to discourage investment, and by all means not savings, because all those are components of what it takes to induce that wonderful person or entity we call in free society or in capitalism the entrepreneur, and to exercise the entrepreneur spirit, which means to take a risk. And when risks are taken, jobs are created. That's how this wonderful thing called capitalism works. So the single number one recommendation was you must reduce the income tax rate. Not necessarily the tax burden. This bill does indeed reduce the tax burden substantially at the income level, somewhat set off by some new consumption tax proposals that are within it, but certainly does make a statement really throughout the world, but especially in the United States from a competitive standpoint, that Georgia has now one of the most competitive income tax rates of any states that have income tax. I know of but maybe one or two states that have income tax that are below us now in rate, and we certainly are positioned in the southeast now with a competitive states to where we are a shining example of lessening of tax burden on our citizens to create a great environment. We put a proposition in bill form last Wednesday in the public domain, which I hope several of you have already had a chance to see and analyze along with us, and there have been three sort of major changes to that you will see incorporated in another proposal, which I hope to be the final proposal that we should have in everyone's hands by late this afternoon. The three changes were we went from a proposed 4.5% income tax rate to a 4.6% income tax rate, which was a little more than we ambitiously hoped to be able to achieve, but it still is a 23.5% or so decrease in the current rate, and we're very proud to make that accomplishment in our first huge step into this arena of tax reform. We increased, though, the itemized deductions for taxpayers between $0 and $75,000 to $30,000. We heard from the charitable community that there was a concern that maybe charitable giving might be chilled by the elimination of deductions, so we heard that message loud and clear, and we have done this to be as family friendly as possible. So we increased those standard deductions that are now allowable from 0 to 75 up to 30,000, and then there's 17,000 all the way out now to 160,000, at which time they begin to be phased out all the way into $172,000 worth of income, which essentially makes this a substantial tax cut for what all of our modeling would indicate as over 90% of Georgia taxpayers. Now, there are some people with extraordinary circumstances, huge health losses, those kind of things. Obviously, no flat tax is ever going to capture every potential circumstance, but I can assure you that, and thank goodness for computers, because in my day growing up, and I'm older than a lot of dirt you walked in, not coming in here, doing this on a calculator would have been impossible the way I was trained to do it. But we have had some mighty good sophisticated help in the modeling, and I think we have taken into account just about every $200 increment in our code from 0 to $200,000 with all sorts of various assumptions. And I'm now pretty confident as I can get as an old accountant that we've certainly modeled and seen the effect we think of just about every single taxpayer scenario that we can possibly dream up and consider how this new reform to our code might impact. The other change, the only of three changes that were made from Wednesday's proposal that you've already seen, is that we will increase the child exemption to $5,000. We feel like that's easily understood and it's a lot easier to comply with. Frankly, it was in the other bill from the standpoint of tax impact, but it was in the other bill as a credit of $150 for taxpayers 0 to 60,000, and thereover there was going to be a $2,000 exemption. Well, the $150 credit, which is dollar for dollar against the tax, translates in exemption terms to another $3,000. So it's certainly easier understood, and I think will be a lot less expensive and simpler to comply with tax return-wise for the citizens of Georgia, just to couch it as a $5,000 exemption. So in effect, we have increased the current law exemption per child of $3,000 for these low-income groups up to not low, but moderate income groups up to 60,000, from 3,000 to 5,000. And to be family friendly and to help our citizens, those the most in need, to be able to deal with the circumstances of the depths of this economy as we hopefully now have a basis to grow out of. So those are the three major changes that you'll see in this afternoon's bill. I'd be glad to try to answer any questions after we're all through here. But I, like the speaker and others, want to thank my colleagues in the Senate, especially the two gentlemen here with me today. Their assistance in this matter I don't really have the words to adequately tell you how much it's appreciated or how sophisticated it's been. But to have people with the institutional knowledge and academic knowledge that these gentlemen have brought to the analysis here has been an incredible blessing to all the people of Georgia, I can assure you. But we have, I think, a very, very solid proposal going forward. And as the speaker said, at the end of the day, and no matter however many ways you want to describe it, it says Georgia's open for business, and this is a great place to exercise that wonderful thing called the entrepreneurial spirit. Take risk, and let's start creating jobs for Georgians. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. I'd just like to say that this has been a phenomenal process. In the 9 years that I've served in the legislature, never before outside of the Appropriations Committee process have I seen so many people engage in a process and work so hard and put so many hours into being sure that what we did was responsible and effective and accomplished the goals that we set forth. This proposal that we hope to have finalized this afternoon will result in $128 million tax savings to Georgians in the first year and $200 million over a period of 3 years. As you heard before, the previous speakers, that we believe leaving that money in the pockets of the citizens stimulates our economy, always has in times in the past, and we feel good about this and look forward to the positive results that'll come from this. Part of that process has been to engage our accountants in the General Assembly, and we've had two on the Senate side that have engaged many hours, Senator Seabaugh and Senator Balfour, and I'll turn the microphone over to Senator Balfour, and he can talk to you about a few more of the details on it.
I'm going to keep this short. I think you've heard quite a bit already, and we're looking forward to the questions that you might have. But I can't emphasize enough, from the macro to the micro, we've looked at this, and again, it's a $128 million tax reduction for the citizens of Georgia this next year, and over 3 years, over $200 million. Rate reduction of 23% in the first year, 24% in the second year. And when we look at the individual brackets in and of themselves, it's a good tax break as well. So we're excited about this. We've reduced the deficit in it substantially, and we're very pleased working with the House and the governor on this and coming to this proposal today. So